Welcome to the Santa Anita Park Memorial Day live stream, focusing on the mandatory payout pick six on Monday afternoon at Santa Anita Park. Begins, of course, in race 5. Nick Tamaro here, deputizing for Peter Thomas Fornatal, who is off on the Amalfi Coast soaking in Italian rays and various fizzy waters and things like that. Joining me are two gentlemen who've been here before doing this live stream and who couldn't find anybody better. I have a funny story about one of you that I'll offer up in just a second. Duke Matisse, first up. Duke, great to have you back. Good to see you.
Thanks, Nick. I wouldn't mind being on the Amalfi Coast myself, but, we'll have to stay in cloudy California where the sun never shines.
Duty calls. I could tell you about the weather in Texas, but nobody wants to hear it. So it's a scorcher already. So, and of course, joining us in the top left corner is Jeff Chapman, live from Santa Anita.
Yeah, glad to be here and looking forward to the pick six tomorrow. It's been a great weekend. Of course, we just had the Corgis run, so huge crowd at Santa Anita today, and a lot of fun out here.
Who won the Corgis?
Well, I don't know the name because we did a pool. And I got beat ahead for like $300. I had the nice. 5. The 8 won by a head. I was closing fast. So it was a troubled trip, but I got beat. So I can't remember the name of the dog.
We had the Corgis last week at Sam Houston on Preakness Day, and we have the wiener dogs earlier in the meet, and they've set up this track on the track so that it keeps them from just running off every direction. The Corgis actually had a lower percentage of dogs finish the race than the wiener dogs did. Usually like 4 or 5 of them went down the track. There was one Corgi in almost every race. I know very little about Corgis, but I figured there was not a less obedient breed of dog out there than Dachshund.
Well, it's funny. They do so many heats right in the infield here. And then they do the semifinals and the finals on the track, the main track. And let me tell you, those dogs can run when they get to the finals. So it was great. It was interesting.
It's a star-studded class by the time you get to that level. So it's good to see. What I was going to say is, so you were introduced to me years and years ago as Chappie. So I have always referred to you as has everybody else. So I had Frank Scattoni on the podcast on Friday, and I said Sunday night, Duke and myself and Todd Chapman are going to do his live stream. And he said, it's Jeff Chapman. And so I said, great. Well, I'm going to tell him I don't know where Todd came from, but hey, I said, he said, it's easier. Just go with Chappie. Well, so that's what we're going to do moving forward.
On a side note of that, so I've worked here for about 20 some years, but in between I had a stint at TVG for about 7 years. And I think 5 years in, I was out with a bunch of people, including Greg Wolf. And I had been out with Greg Wolf many times over 5 years. And somebody called me Jeff, and he looked at me and he said, I didn't know that was your first name. No clue.
There you go. So it's a common mistake, not anything I have to feel bad about for sure. So I'm sure we could regale everyone with funny tales of names and other things, but nobody's on board for that. So let's get into this pick six, which begins in race number 5 at 3:12 Pacific time. The carryover is over. Is it up towards $1 million going into this? I don't know exactly.
I think they're expecting the pool to be around 3 million is the final pool they're expecting.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll certainly have plenty of support. The carryover going in is 359,911. So, of course, that will mushroom. The first leg of it is the Gamely, one of 3 grade 1s on this card, going 1 1/8 on the turf. Duke, how are we going to get it started?
Well, I like Quattro L. Quattro L has just been a very, very consistent mare that trained by Jeff Mullins and ridden by Barrios, who is very patient with these turf runners. I hope there's enough speed because she has to get a little bit of pace to run at, but usually I think with Queen Goddess and maybe, a bunch of D'Amato, you got the D'Amatos in here, and you got enough where I think Quattrell would get some pace to run at. And last time she stumbled at the start and still ran a really bang up second to Macadamia, who I think she will turn the tables on. So I'm going to start it off with Quattro L as my single in the first leg.
Oh, there we go. Starting off as a single, very strong. Chappie, are you on Quattro L as strongly, or you're going to make her amongst others?
No, I am not. I am. That would be my top pick, but I think this race is completely wide open. I'm a big fan of Quattro L, but I had a tough time with this race. I could make a case for about anybody, but maybe Bellamore in here. Thought it was interesting that Closing Remarks scratched out of an easy spot today to go in there tomorrow. And like Duke said, one of the three D'Amatos is going to go, I think, and keep Queen Goddess honest on the front end. But I think this is there's a few races in the sequence, and this is one of them that I think is wide open. So no strong opinion for me.
Yeah, it is a tough race. I'm sort of Captain Obvious here. I think Queen Goddess is going to wire the field. And maybe I'm expecting a little too much. I will admit I don't know why she ran so poorly last time, but Keeneland and Churchill, being sandier turf courses at times can create more poor performances than you would think. Because really she had been remarkably consistent up to that point, and that was a real stinker. But having a Chasing Italian around there is not quite the same as maybe having School Dance and Macadamia chasing you early. So I'm going to take that approach. I'm more or less, I think this is the mount that Saez came over for. So I would assume that he's going to do his usual thing and put her on the lead. And quite honestly, even if Flavian goes nuts on School Dance and wants to go, I think that puts Queen Goddess in a good spot, stalking the pace. The horse I wanted to ask both of you about that's going to get a lot of support, that's 5-2 on the morning line, is Via Reggio, who won her first start in North America. And Brendan Walsh shipped over a comparable horse last year, whose name I don't remember, but she won this race last year, and the profile was somewhat similar. What are your general takes on Via Reggio? Lasix off, and in all likelihood, she's going to get a tougher trip this time around, because you don't get a much easier trip than the one she had last time.
Yeah,
I'm going to defer. Go ahead, Duke. I'm going to defer to you.
Really good pocket trip last time in that race at Keeneland, and I just don't think she's up to, like you said, the Lasix off, which I'm not a fan of. Rispoli, I'm not a fan of either. Rispoli's he just finds trouble. I don't know how, but he always finds trouble. It's just the guy's just always running up heels and angling out and angling in. I do think Queen Goddess is probably a horse you have to use, just because, like what you said, if that horse gets loose or just stalks a slow pace, like looks like it really could happen. She would be my second choice, but I really like Quattroel. But if I'm defensive, I use Queen Goddess.
The only thing that surprised me a little bit was the morning line on Via Reggio. I thought maybe I was missing something, that this horse was actually only 5-2 on the morning line. Did that surprise you a little bit, Nick?
More than surprised, right? I mean, I thought that was absolutely shocking. The horse whose name I was trying to come up with from last year was Ocean Road, who was making her third start in North America. She was coming in actually very similarly. She had won an allowance race at Keeneland and then came into the game lead, but and I think she had things really go her way last year quite a bit as well. There was a pretty strong pace. Yeah, I didn't see how this horse could be a shorter price than Macadamia and Quattroel. I don't see that really at all. She looked to me price-wise as if she would be. Unfortunately, I'm not making morning lines right now, but Twitter after that as well. But yeah, I didn't see how she could be a shorter price than those two horses. They both seemed like, they seemed like way likelier winners to me, and they certainly seemed like shorter prices. And to kind of put that Keeneland allowance race in perspective, the horse who was the big favorite in there was a Brad Cox import for Juddmonte, and he's running her in the Ouija board at Lone Star tomorrow. So, this is a big class jump. The other thing that we know from, East Coast and Midwest form lines, Fastest Flight and Bipartisanship are not particularly tough allowance horses. That was a 3 other than, but those are not. I think this is a salty group of West Coast-based horses, and I'm willing to kind of get that wrong, because I think they're going to prove to be a little bit too much for her and for everybody else. Is that good on the first leg, gentlemen, on to race 6?
Absolutely.
Good.
Let's do it. Second leg, race 6, maiden special weight event, one of 2 dirt races in the pick 6 sequence, and we'll have a field of 6 going postward here, I guess headlined in many ways by 2 Bob Baffert runners on the outside, both first-time starters. Duke, did you favor one of these 2 or somebody else, and how deep do you think you'll go?
Workout reports tell me that True Hood is the better of the Bob Bafferts. I got a lot of information that True Hood worked with Elwood Blues and outworked that horse, which runs in the low 80s buyer. It also last year worked with Cave Rock, and you know who Cave Rock is. Who must be retired because he hasn't been around, but he was Bob Baffert's number 1 2-year-old last year. So I think True Hood is the horse to beat. That being said, I think Uncle Reg and Happy Tears have been working together also, and I was surprised to see Saez go for Uncle Reg. Because I think if they worked even, I think I'd take the one that, hadn't run yet. I mean, but I was surprised to see that he jumps on Uncle Reg. So there's got to be a story there, but I was 6 with 1-3.
Chappie, what about these two Baffords?
Okay, so I watched as many works as I could on XBTV. The Extortion and Truehood did work together, but it was way back on April 28th. Truehood was clearly better, but it looked like maybe that Extortion was a little bit behind. I think that day, Truehood worked 5 furlongs and Extortion worked 4, but they head to head, no question who was better. Then on May 17th is when Truehood on XBTV worked heads up with Elwood Blues, who ran second to Arabian Lion back in the fall. Then Extortion worked very well solo, I believe. I watched these. I just put good work on May 9th. So I do give Truehood the benefit of the doubt, and the outside post I like a little bit better. The two McCarthys, they worked together the last 2 works. They each outworked each other by a little bit. So I guess I got to give Happy Tears the nod just because the Uncle Reg drew the rail. But I'm leaning towards the outside Baffert.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting on Truehood, and it seems as if the quality of the workouts has probably been put into this morning line a little bit. I know John White will often do that, and because Truehood is a shorter price, Truehood has virtually no pedigree at all, and went for $700,000 at the Keeneland yearling sale back in 2021. Obviously, he's going to be a good-looking horse, no doubt about it. The dam of Extortion is a half to Munnings, so that's probably part of the reason why he went for $1 million back in November of last year, which is a late date for him to have sold at anyway. That had to have been a kind of a resale kind of thing. I don't have terribly much to add. I thought Uncle Reg was interesting enough as the experienced horse, and maybe having the rail, he'll have to force the issue a little bit. But these Baffert horses seem to break so well. I don't want to outsmart myself. I was going to use the 1, 3, and 6 as well, and probably back up with the 5, because it just seems like you're making things much more difficult on yourself if you try and pick through those and exclude some of them. It also builds up your ticket costs, but I think with the 20-cent increment, obviously you've got a little bit more flexibility. So on to race number 7, the Shoemaker Mile, at a mile on the turf course. This is a terrific race with a big field. It was great to see. As I was scrolling down the overnight, I saw the size of the field and saw some of the names. I was like, this is awesome. I mean, this is about as good as you're going to get for a West Coast turf race right now. And with that said, Chappie, where are you leaning in the Shoemaker Mile?
All right, so this is an interesting race. D'Amato usually he's got his fingerprints all over this race, and I'm going to kind of go against D'Amato here. There's a couple horses I find very interesting. 2 races in a row, I was all over De Jour. I didn't like De Jour last time out. I'm kind of back on De Jour. Saez jumps aboard. They've been working this horse, working better, but it looks like they're putting some speed into this horse. I know he's always been just make one big run late, but I just think De Jour is going to run a big race here. Another horse that I find interesting is kind of the up-and-comer, and I think if Exalted makes another move forward, Exalted is interesting. That horse has done nothing wrong since moving the turf 3 for 3, kind of found a new home. I know these are some salty horses to go against, and this horse is going to have to run he's going to have to run his A game here, but I think it's very interesting. And then another horse, I don't know a lot about European form, so I'm going to have to get your thoughts on this, but I love the way Salesman worked on May 15th. This horse absolutely annihilated Forbidden Kingdom. Now, Forbidden Kingdom Duke and I were not a fan of that horse running yesterday, and the horse didn't run well, but the horse works well. And I don't like the post going a mile, but I think this horse has got some talent coming in, and I don't know any kind of the European form, but I'll leave that up to you guys. But just on works alone, I found that horse very interesting. I think Hong Kong Harry might be coming back a little too quick. I know Hong Kong Harry loves Santa Anita, but I'm kind of a play against there.
Yeah, a lot of good info, a lot of horses, a lot of ways to go in here. Duke, what about you? Where did you land in the Shoemaker
Yeah,
Royal?
you said a lot of things, that I was going to talk about. Salesman is a very interesting horse. I don't like the post. Salesman also worked with a horse called Yellow Brick and outworked him too. Yellow Brick I think it's still a maiden, but runs very, very good speed figures in the 90s. So Salesman, I think is like I'm going to put him on like a B as a backup. I do like Exalted. Exalted, since he's hit the turf, has done nothing wrong. And last time he was super impressive to me. I did not like him in that race. I did not think he could win. He pressed the pace and just drew off like a good thing. So he's a must use, and there's not a lot of pace in this race. I think the pace is going to be between him and Lamplighter Jack. So if he can stalk Lamplighter Jack and do like he did last time, he's going to be very tough to beat. Again, another B horse I think you got to use is another horse you mentioned, Chappie, Du Jour. He was in that race with Exalted, and he had a little bit of trouble in that race, got carried out a little bit on the first turn, and gets Louis Saez. You expect him to be more forwardly placed. So you might see him in like a pocket trip. So I'm on Exalted, but I like Du Jour, and you have to throw in Hong Kong Harry. So I'm 6 on top with 2, 3, 11 underneath.
Yeah, it's a very competitive race. On the topic of Salesman, those aren't great running lines. I mean, he's just a listed stakes horse overseas. But, look, I'd be kidding you if I didn't say that we've seen horses with similar class type of profiles come over here and do just fine. He's a half to solo who won 5 Group 1s in a stretch, I think, between 2010 and 2011. Won basically every major distance race in Europe, including the Queen Anne and the Queen Elizabeth II to close out the year. So just an old Wertheimer at Frere family. Of course, the thing that you used to bank on, at least I used to with these horses, is that you'd assume they needed Lasix if they came over here, but that's not a luxury that they have anymore. But yeah, I noticed kind of some of the workout buzz too, and it looks like he could be a little interesting. I took a price here. I picked Cabo Spirit. I don't know if he's good enough. I don't really think he ran that poorly in the Kilrow. I thought that was kind of his class test. I'm very concerned about Joe Bravo, as I always am whenever
your buddy.
He's my guy. But I actually thought this horse ran very well in the Maker's Mark Mile last time. I thought it was a much better performance. I mean, I figured those horses would bury him altogether. And he probably didn't get passed by more horses because of how slow the pace was, but I have a feeling we're going to continue to find out that was a particularly strong race. And the runbacks so far, obviously Modern Games won the Lock-Inge, and Up to the Mark won the Turf Classic on Derby Day. And Speaking Scout came back and was probably a less than stellar ride away from winning the dinner party. So I think it's a productive race, and I'm glad to see him back home. So I wanted to try him. I'm going to go deep here. I think you're sort of obligated to. I don't have an argument with Hong Kong Harry. Maybe I'm a little concerned about him coming back too quickly. I thought Flavien Prat's ride on him in the Kilrow was not great. I thought he really took away his one advantage, which is that he has kind of one burst. And he asked him to make a prolonged run where he had to get towards the front outside the quarter pole and fight on. And he's just never going to win to me in that scenario. So I'm going to use him. I'm going to use Salesman. I'm going to use Cabo Spirit. Like Duke, I was absolutely astounded at how well Exalted ran last time. I thought he was a very easy toss first time against graded stakes horses, and he made me look very foolish. He was very, very good. In fact, I think you and I did a mandatory payout show with Pete when he won 2 starts back, and I was like, I think that was a one-off kind of race, and here he is 3 for 3, now ready for a grade 1. I didn't know if I didn't know really the other D'Amato horses in here, both Balnikov and Gold Phoenix. I think each have knocks. I know Gold Phoenix got the job done in the Kilrow 2 back, but that doesn't seem like a race that's going to hold up this time around, right?
Yeah. I for some reason I would give look. I know Works are Works, but I know the way D'Amato works them on the training track, they seem to run to that. And of the 2, they actually worked together on May 22nd. Balnikov outworked Gold Phoenix, so maybe give a little nod there. By the way, the only thing I heard, I kind of asked around about Salesman. I was trying to find anything out. I heard that they brought this horse over because the horse they wanted the firm ground, didn't like the soft footing.
Yeah.
So,
makes sense. He could also end up wanting more distance too. I mean, this might be the mile might be a little short for him, so we could see him maybe, in more like the Del Mar handicap type of races later in the summer.
Yeah.
Anything else, Duke?
No, I think you guys put it really well. Like I agree with you on the Hong Kong Harry ride, the 2 back. I think he moved way too early. But what's he going to do here at a mile? That's the problem, is he's going to have to make the last move. So I think he might be too late this time. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm looking for horses that are more forwardly placed. I don't see a ton of pace. And I think sometimes these guys get a little lost in those flat mile races, and horses just get away from them too much.
Yeah, and I think if you're a pace figure user, what you knew going into the kill row is that Hong Kong Harry had benefited from big pace setups in 3 straight starts. So, and he finally didn't get a big pace setup, and he underperformed. So no doubt he's going to be at the mercy of how quickly things go. And we'll see if Luis Saez does get into du jour a little bit early. I think that's probably a pretty good thought. That's also seemingly where Saez is always most comfortable. Race number 8 is the Hollywood Gold Cup with a field of 6 going 1.25 miles. And it sure looks like Bob Baffert's got a lock on this thing, right, guys?
Duke, I think Defunded is a stone cold single, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of Country Grammar. I don't see much speed in this race at all. And like Duke and I talked about before you came on, the lead is there for the taking. But the last time Defunded stumbled badly and showed a new tactic of rating and ran off the screen. So I don't think this is the strongest Hollywood Gold Cup we've ever seen by any stretch of the imagination. I hate to single chalk, but this is to me a single all day long.
What do you think, Duke?
Yeah, unfortunately, this race came up a little bit soft for the Hollywood Gold Cup. It does have Country Grammar, it does have Defunded. There's not a lot of speed. Paroli probably will be the pace setter, and Defunded will probably stalk him and inherit the lead at some point. So I'm looking for Defunded to probably, be in the right spot, stalk, probably inherit the lead at the turning for home. And who can come get him? The only questions that can come get him, I think Country Grammar could, but he's been around the world lately, and I think he might come out a little flat. And the only other horse I think that even has a shot is Senor Buscador. And I'm not sure 1.25 miles is what Senor Buscador wants, even though he's one of those stone closers. Just he might flatten out, but if there's one guy to get him to keep running, might be Luis Saez. So I'm really Defunded on top, but I hate giving out 4 to 5s. That might be singles, but if you really want to be safe, you go 4, then 1, then 2, 4, then 2, then 1. I don't think the 3, 5, 6 have any chance at all.
Yeah, I think from a pace perspective, you're talking about Defunded, and I like to use Timeform US, and Timeform US pace projector slapped the no speed designation on this race. So they're expecting things to be pretty slow on the front end, which I think anybody who looked at it would come to the same conclusion. And Defunded just looks like he's got a massive advantage. Country Grammar's a horse that's really never performed as well in America as he has overseas. And he was bad in the Dubai World Cup. So, there's got to be some amount of concern that maybe Father Time, who is undefeated after all, has kind of seen it on Country Grammar as he could be getting a little long in the tooth. But, we've seen him. He is a funny horse, right? He has jumped up with some big efforts here and there. I know he beat a relatively soft field in the San Antonio back on opening day of the Classic meet, but he looked great that day. And that horse looks like if he runs that race, he can easily win here. But I feel like the consistency of Defunded, and I'm not going to go on some big soliloquy about a 3 to 5 shot. That seemingly is what puts him over the top, coupled with that pace edge. Anything else on this Hollywood Gold Cup, guys?
I wish there was more to talk about, but there's really nothing there.
It's not our father's Hollywood Gold Cup. But it is the Hollywood Gold Cup nonetheless. Race 9 kicks off a late double, and the Golden Hour pick 4 that's made up of 2 Santa Anita races with gigantic fields. And I'm really looking forward to seeing these last 2 and hearing what you guys have to say about it. Duke, where did you land here in the 9th?
I'll tell you about my bad beat story of the day, since I'm sure we wasted we probably could have talked about the Hollywood Gold Cup for 5 more minutes. So but here's info for you, Nick and Chappie. I get a call from John the Clocker, who you know John, right? Big John.
Sure.
And he says, this is info for you. He says AJ Foyt told Al Stahl to bet the 14 car in the Indy 500. Did you watch the Indy 500?
No, I didn't.
No.
So the Indy 500, I watched the whole thing. I never watched the Indy 500 in my entire life. I bet $200 on the 14 car to win at 14 to 1, right? So they come down to the last 10 laps, and there's crash after crash after crash. And the 14 cars, like he's third, fourth, fifth. He's right there, But the guy that's in third crashes, the guy that's in like fourth crashes. So now he's third with like 4 laps to go. And then they come back out on the track and they crash one more time. And the 3 cars are dead lined up across the track. And that determines where they start for the last lap, because there's only 1 lap to go. He lost by 2 noses to start first. He starts third. So he finishes third as my info on the Indy 500. It was a great story, but
you get a hot tip from AJ Foyt.
Another bad beat.
Further example of you meeting the greatest people in the world at the racetrack, right? You're never gonna find anybody better. Well, let's hope for a little bit better fortune here on this pick 6 sequence, including race number 9, a bulky field going long on the turf. All right, who's it going to be, Duke?
This is an interesting race. I mean, this has got to be the toughest race on the sequence for sure. I tried to narrow it down to as low as I could. So I'm going to make my top choice the 5 horse, Emerald Lake. Now, Emerald Lake, if you look back when she came off the layoff from Santa Anita to Del Mar, ran a really good second from an 11 post at Del Mar, ran a comparable figure to these horses, ran like an 82. And I know the owner of this horse, and they wouldn't run this horse on closing day, or not, I shouldn't say closing day, on a giveaway day. And they would never run this horse short. Let's put it that way. So I think this horse is very, very well meant to come back here in this spot, and fits too. It's not far off speed figure wise. Has some speed, can get really close. That rider that I think he's from Italy, right? This guy, Fresu.
Yeah. Most recently, he was riding in Dubai,
right?
This guy can ride too, especially on the turf. So don't be alarmed by the rider at all. So she'd be my top choice. Others I would use Ultimate High from the rail. Got tactical speed, got your favorite rider, Nick, Joe Bravo, who's probably going to check 3 or 4 times and come running, but that horse has definitely got a shot. The foreign horse gets Pratt, which comes out of these real cheap races in Great Britain or wherever the heck they are. But picks up Pratt, really interesting rider choice for that kind of horse. So I thought I couldn't throw that one out. And then a horse on the far outside, Glenall, I thought had a wide trip and still won last time. Gets one of my favorite riders, Rispoli, who I don't like from an outside post, but I thought I was going to use him as a backup. So I'm going to key the 5 and use 1, 8, and 12 underneath.
Very nice. Chappie, what do you have here?
I'm similar to Duke. The only other horse I might throw in, and that's good info on Emerald Lake, Duke, so I'm going to use that horse. Second off of a layoff is the 3, My Favorite Daughter. I'm going to use the Anna set. I thought was very interesting. There was only one work I saw, but the horse worked very well way back in April. But the horse looks talented, and I thought that was very interesting that Pratt jumps aboard for Leonard Powell, who does well with these shippers. So it's Spreadville for me as well. I thought this was a very tough race, and other than what Duke had to say, My Favorite Daughter would be on my ticket as well.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Duke, these are some cheap races that Anizette is coming out of, and so I don't know really where she's going to stack up when all is said and done. But you've always had to take these types seriously, given especially how sharp Eclipse is at buying horses overseas and sending them over. They seem to get into the right hands more often than not. I don't love the likely price on the 7 Unfaithful Ways, but I think she'll run better this time around. I'm not all that jazzed about taking her as the favorite, but she ran well into the teeth of a pretty slow pace last time out. And I think it's one of those races where the buyer figure belies the performance overall. I think she ran better than you would think with just a 73 figure, and she should be a little bit more forwardly placed here. I thought that Hector Berrios probably learned his lesson, keeping her as far back as he did last time out. I agree on My Favorite Daughter as well. I think getting back to the turf will certainly help. I don't want to hold the bad dirt start against her. And it looks like just a terrific race. I mean, I think one where, all of these races we've been talking about, how narrow you can go and how simple they are, that leads into these couple of really, really tough races to finish it out, including the 9th. Let's go to that 10th, which closes out the sequence down the hill at about 6.5 furlongs. I thought this was just a tremendous race and a lot of fun, a lot of different ways you can go. Chappie, how are we going to close it out?
Oh man, this was another tough race for me. I've been chasing. I'm going to do it for Andrew. The 7 seems a little bit hard to ride, but both efforts down the hill were pretty good. Back in on February 5th, I needed that horse for my life and looked like a stone cold winner and lost on the last jump to Tulsa Tornado. King Apollo is interesting, although King Apollo seems to get in trouble quite a bit. And a long shot that I'm going to use, I've been chasing because the way I like the morning workouts is Nero Tulip, who's gotten in trouble a lot, but it's the first time gelding. Peter Urton has been on absolute fire, so I think at a price, and so is Pereira for that matter. He won 4 races yesterday. That's one of the bombs I'm going to use, but I think this is another. And one more long shot is the Dancing Rinka at 15-1, who drew the rail last time out. I think that horse is an interesting horse who got in trouble 2 back at a huge price.
Duke, what about you?
Yeah, this race is another one of these ones where I think you can't just rely on 1 or 2. You might have to use 4 or 5. But my top choice is King Apollo. King Apollo's got, it seems to be an improving speed figure type horse. 2 back ran a really good race on a weird turf course. I think that was the turf when they were having some trouble with it. It was at least a little wet or something, and the turf was a little bad, and ran a really good 3rd that day to 1 Flew South. Just seems like 6.5 is perfect for that horse. Do It for Andrew seems like he's got that little bit of just can't get there at 6.5. I'm kind of a little bit against him, and I think he'll be probably the favorite. What I would think. D'Amato and Pratt, I would think he'd go off the favorites. I'm trying to beat him a little bit. I probably will use him defensively, but King Apollo top choice. Then the horse Chappie mentioned, Dancing Rika. Dancing Rika was in that same race that on that weird turf course 2 back. So I threw that out because I didn't think horses were handling that turf course that day, and then drew the 1 hole last time and kind of got like a weird inside trip, but could surprise at 15-1. And one more, Wi-Fire. I think Wi-Fire is just a sharp horse that's improving quickly and has very, very good solid speed figures around 90 and has tactical speed and has my favorite boy Rispoli on. So hopefully he won't get this one in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, it seems like 7 or 8 of these horses, and I think Chappie briefly mentioned the 9 Subsidize, who I like. We cut out for a second, so I wasn't sure if you talked about him. If you didn't, then I will. 2 starts back, he got into a pretty significant amount of trouble on the turn, and Johnny V checked him hard. He went all the way back to last on the rail. He made kind of a garbage time move. It was not anything all that impressive. And then last time out, he was just kind of a fish out of water at a mile. It was too far, and he more or less stalled out in the last quarter or so. Never really lost any ground, but didn't run poorly. Peter Miller's got good numbers cutting back on the turf at Santa Anita, and I think this is a horse who ultimately wants to sprint. I'd really love them get back to the tactics that helped him win his first turf start at Aqueduct, where he was just a couple of lengths off of it. I can't imagine that Peter Miller has trained all the speed out of this horse. And if he does have any tactical speed still, it'd be a great opportunity to put him, a little bit more forwardly, especially with an outside draw, considering you hit that, that first right-hand turn a little bit quicker. I thought King Apollo was clearly the horse to beat. I assume that he'll be favored along with the Do It for Andrew, as Duke was saying. He's a horse who's just been very consistent, and I thought he ran well last time out. In watching the replay of that race the first time through, though, I watched the replay, and I didn't even know who was running from that race in this race, and I was really hoping Cherubic Factor was coming back. He's not. So the next time Cherubic Factor runs, take a good look at him. And then the other horse that I wanted to mention was Dancing Rinka as well, who I thought, who I picked 3rd here, who I thought had a look at a big price. And I agree with Duke that that there's something to like there about the 3-back performance, and last time out maybe just was in the wrong spot. So Antonio Fresu, for what it's worth, booted home a winner last summer at Saratoga for Chad Summers. So he is arguably like a Hercules level talent. There's plenty to like there.
Yeah, I missed that Subsidize. I think that Subsidize has a very good chance. He had the one post when he ran down the hill that day too, which is definitely not the place to be.
No, he was in a series of bad spots. Look, obviously something happened last September at Del Mar because he was gone for 7 months after that. But his 2 races since he came back have been much better. And really, when you package together all of his turf races, he's never really run all that bad. It's just been he's kind of been an unfortunate. He's been disadvantaged by circumstances on a number of occasions. So he's an interesting horse to try. I'm going to try and get alive to him as much as I can, just because he's going to be a big price and hopefully he'll at least give me a scare.
Yeah, and Kimura's flying into how many mounts does he have on this card?
I think he's got 3 or 4. I mean, I assume he's mainly coming in for Gold Phoenix, but then there's no racing. I don't know if there's any racing tomorrow at Woodbine. Yeah, I don't think that Memorial Day is observed up there. So in total, he has, I'll tell you right now, he has 6 mounts tomorrow.
Oh, so he's riding the card.
Quite a few, but yeah, I mean, the mount he's there for is Gold Phoenix, right? He's riding a 20-to-1 shot in the Hollywood Gold Cup and 4 non-stakes. So maybe he's there for Subsidize, and we'll find out, and it'll make us happy.
For you, he might be there.
Guys, it's exactly right. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add on this sequence or tomorrow's card at all?
No, tough card. Hopefully,
it's tough. I think it's a good card. Yeah.
Hopefully, we can give out some winners to people, and they can hit this pick 6.
Definitely, certainly give it a run. Carryover starts with over 300,000. Again, begins in race number 5. Gentlemen, thanks so much. This has been a lot of fun. If Pete decides to travel around the world again, I'll certainly volunteer to step in.
You got it. Appreciate it. Everybody, good luck. Thanks, guys.